be okay. God, my coffee cooled way down in this cup.
There's a song lyric.
Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans?
Sweet.
To miss her each night and day. No, I'm not wrong, but the feeling's getting stronger the longer I stay away. Miss those moss-covered vines, those tall sugar pines, where mockingbird used to sing. And I love to see that lazy Mississippi hurry into spring. Moonlight on the bayou, Creole tune fills the air, and I dream about magnolias in June, wishing that I was there. Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans when that's where you left your heart? And there's something more. I miss that one I care for more than I miss New Orleans. Miss those moss-covered vines, those tall sugar pines, where mockingbird, you know they used to sing. And I love to say that lazy Mississippi hurry, oh she's hurrying to spring. Moonlight on the bayou, Creole tune fills the air, and I dream about magnolias in June, and I'm wishing I was there. Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans when that's where you left your heart? And there's something more. I miss the one I care for more than I miss New Orleans. Oh, I miss her more than I miss New Orleans. New Orleans.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Very sweet. It's like very lazy and
That's
nice,
right.
man.
Lazy and sweet. That's me. My wife would tell you the same thing.
Let's see. I'm just getting my, my shit together. Very nice, really beautiful. And this is my guest, ladies and gentlemen, guitarist Tim Lerch. And very excited to have you on today, Tim.
I'm happy to be here. It's nice. I've watched a number of the episodes.
As I said, I'm a guitar fan. I mean, I love all instruments. I love the piano, but guitar is just, I don't know. There's like this little magical world that the sounds can open up. It's really quite a beautiful instrument.
As a singer, do you have a particular way of describing what a guitar does for you as an accompanist that you like, that makes you feel good?
Good question. Well, there's, I think it's more of just um, describing maybe the sound and the feeling of the sound. Um, so for me, I think where my voice sits, which is similar to my speaking voice when I'm singing, um, there's, I'm not sure how to put it into words, but guitar is the area of the tonality is is kind of enveloping, and then my voice like kind of sits inside,
Oh, okay.
and especially guitarists such as yourself who um, play. Okay, I don't know if I've described this before, but the notes are not just like linear. They're there's like a something here and then a wave there and here, and that's
Oh,
even within the chord itself. There's something about that movement and the where the tonality sits
mhm.
that it's something sensual, and it's I really don't know how to describe it, but it's very dear to me. There's something about that I just described that is very precious to me. I'm not sure. I don't
Good.
know what else to say about that.
I don't think it's. I was curious to see if you had your finger on it, but I don't think it's necessary really to put words to it because you clearly, there's a relationship there. So that's cool. That's
Yeah, and gotta wonder why. I mean, growing up, I played a little guitar when I was young, but I mean, it wasn't like I fell in love with guitar right away. My dad was a sax player, and he was playing mostly big bands and that kind of thing. So, and probably the first guitar that I heard was a style that I wasn't crazy about, just kind of, as my father would say, chink, chink, chink,
yeah.
chink. Sometimes he would yell at the guitar players to do that. I was like, no, that's not.
You seem like well, of course, you're one of the fortunate few, I think, that got to sing with Ted,
Yeah.
and then that pretty much spoils you for everything after that. But there's an orchestral quality that guitar can, in good hands, achieve, that has this thing you were describing about something happening up here, then something happening in the middle, and I think that's a high watermark for guitar players to be able to play in a kind of orchestral way with the kind of dynamics, but the size of the sound, even though it's somewhat orchestral, the size of the sound is a little shrunken.
Yeah.
Like Segovia said, guitar is like looking at an orchestra with the binoculars turned around the wrong way.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
and
That's so
that's
interesting.
what
Yeah.
I aspire to actually. I'm primarily, particularly accompanying singers. I'm primarily inspired by the orchestrators, and so I have to do this sort of miniaturizing of, Nelson Riddle or something.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Wow. What an interesting conversation already. Yeah, and I'm thinking of guitarists who I've played with who I enjoy, and well, they're quite varied, I'd say, for the reasons. But I think, let's see, I'm trying to think of, I guess when I went into college, I started listening to people like Schofield and Bill Frisell,
Mhm.
and that was a real turn on for me. And Jim Hall too. I mean, Jim Hall wasn't quite like them, but he was, as you're talking about it, kind of orchestral, but in a contained area or something. It kind of reminds me of the Japanese kind of philosophy on a lot of things, like, here's your backyard. It's this big, right? It's not very big. Within this, you have to create this whole bonsai world. So when you go in it, it seems huge,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
So that's kind of a similar idea as well.
Yeah, it's something that uh, I'm afraid I don't often achieve. But you mentioned Bill Frisell and Jim Hall, and they're kind of generationally related. Schofield is also, but Jim Hall seems like to me is the sort of the father of many of these people of our generation who are just a little like 10 years older than say I am. That they took Jim's message and then they put their own, but they were influenced by him.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there's also this sort of Japanese idea of using a single stroke to imply a whole shape,
Yeah.
and I tend to be kind of this, I don't know why, but I might like that tune we just listened to. I might play, but you could also imagine something, you know, and have that be the accompaniment for the line. It doesn't always need that sort of full fleshed out business. That's
Yeah.
something that is sort of on my mind lately, is like thinning out the densities a little bit and letting the lines flow a little more independently than just having everything just like the whole 9 yards all the time.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, there's air in there,
Hmm.
there's space
Hmm.
for other things to move through. Yeah, it's really beautiful. That kind of reminds me of when I sing with pianists. I really would rather they didn't play the bass line,
Hmm.
like if it's just a duo. It doesn't, it locks you in somewhere where I don't want to be locked in.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like playing the bass because here's my, sort of a different maybe spin on it, is I like to play the bass because for me that helps propel the tempo, so I don't have to use the other aspects of the voicings to
Fill in or something.
propel the tempo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a lot of times I think guitar players, they might say, and then they'll play, and that they're kind of using the melody and then the voices just under the melody to kind of create the pulse. And I prefer to let the melody sing as it would be if you were singing it, and then use the bass and the middle voices to create the propulsion if it's necessary, if it's in time.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting for me to talk to a singer and say, well, I'm not crazy about having that bass going all the time. And I thought, oh, well, that might be something that I could really, find quite freeing, because I'm tending to play the bass. Like I pretend like if I'm doing a duo with a singer, very often if it's a tempo, and the thing about doing a duo with a singer is she calls the key in the tempo. That's just it, right? Because of the way the words flow and all that kind of stuff. At least that's my experience.
Usual, yeah.
Yeah, right. But maybe, yeah, I'll have to next time I'm on a gig with a singer. I'll play less bass. I sort of see myself as an enhanced bass player.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
I mean,
It needs to
there's
be quiet.
probably people who like that too. And also, of course, it depends on the player, right? You know,
Right. Yeah.
somebody might play like that and it might be extremely satisfying for me, or in the moment it's cool, but but in general I don't have to hear the bass all the time to be satisfied, and I'm also personally open to here's the bass and here's not the bass and then here's the bass again,
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
kind
Right.
of a mixture of stuff.
I mean, if it's a duo, you got to get whatever kind of variety over the course of an evening that you can get. So, because it's somewhat limited or can be in
Yeah.
terms of the sounds that are being produced. So the textures might be the place where we get variety then.
Yeah. I have a few comments, a few hellos.
Oh,
Uh, Nora, you can't hear Tim that well. Can you hear him now?
check 1, 2, mic check 1,
Yes,
2.
I can hear him. Maybe she was talking about when you first started playing your guitar. I have your guest credits and bio on Guitar Journal from my friend Dan Davila. Tim Lerch, a modern master, uh, and Jacqueline Tabor. I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. I agree with you, Cathy. Bass not needed in duo work.
Interesting. It's funny though. Another point about that is that we only have 6 strings, and maybe 2 of them are bass. So if we don't have those notes, then we might as well be playing ukulele. So there is a kind of thing with guitar where, in order to create the texture that we might want, a bass
Yeah.
note would probably be involved. But I think I know what you mean though, is where this sort of imitation of a bass line
Yeah.
is being produced.
Yeah, it's kind of forces you into a box. I just would rather go on a flow,
Uh
you
huh.
know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Um, so let's see. So let's talk about you a little bit, like your history, just so people uh, get more familiar with you and where you are now. And are are you from where you're living now?
I live now in a town called Tacoma, which is near Seattle.
Yeah.
I've been floating around, for a lot of my life, but I moved up here and first in '89, and then I went away for quite a few years, and then came back in 2006, and been happily working and living up here. I'm fortunate to be in a band called Pearl Django, which is a long time Seattle Tacoma band, and I've
Yeah.
been with them for 7 or 8 years now. Although 2 of them were pandemic years, which kind of only don't count. Uh,
Now, wait, we did talk about the fact that Ron Peters and I were boyfriend and girlfriend,
yeah, yeah,
right?
I know Ron, and I knew you
Right,
and Ron had a connection. Yeah,
right. That in college, and then we came out here together, or he returned here, but I was from Boston
yeah.
originally.
Ron is
Okay.
also a piece of pal, and he was also had a little period of time when he was playing with Pearl Django. I think I don't know how long, but I know he was on at least one of the records, and did either sometime or on and off, and until something else happened or whatever. But yeah, I like Ron. He's a really good player, really
Yeah,
nice guy.
yeah. So you were saying I interrupted you.
It's okay. Yeah, so I've been up here playing all different things. You got to make a living, so you play different things. And then lately, since I joined Pearl Django, it's really great because it I don't have to be quite the jobber. Like all the different sideman gigs. I just can focus on playing in that band and doing my best in that role. And then also Jamie Findlay and I have a duo that we try to play as often as we can, although we haven't been very successful lately because of what's going on. We also live quite far. He's at the other end of the
Oh,
area, so he's way north, and I'm a little far south.
oh,
And then a little further south is another man I really like playing with is John Stoll, and very often he just comes here and we play or make a video or do something. We try and do some teaching together, and that I love John. He's
yeah.
a
He's
great
great.
man.
He's a great guy.
And I was thinking of John when I was thinking of how,
Yeah.
the guitar can be much more open and less specific in terms of generating, tempo and those kinds of things.
Yeah, John is like the king of that.
Yeah, he's got a really beautiful style, and so he and I try and get together and play. He's a little further down south, so it's kind of how it is. John's active though and moves around a lot, so when he's coming up here to do a gig, he very often swings by and we do something together as well.
Yeah, he has an interesting life. He
Yeah,
just on the road
yes, yeah,
whenever he wants. Yeah, it's
right,
like yeah,
yeah.
it's quite interesting. Um,
So I do that. That's my kind of gigging life. I'm also a teacher. I teach a couple of days a week online, privately to sort of, help my students continue growing. And I don't do a bunch, maybe 10 or 12 hours a week,
uh-huh.
which is enough for me. So I love doing it, but I don't want to do it so much that I can't stay fresh with it.
Yeah, yeah. So do you do private? Is that it?
Yeah, one-on-one via Skype. You know,
Yeah.
when the pandemic hit, I moved out of my studio because I was doing in person and Skype kind of in my studio. But then I realized I didn't really need to have a studio. I'm just here at the house, and you couldn't be in person for a long time anyway. And I don't think I'm going to go back to doing one-on-one in person in some studio somewhere or something. It was, fine and wonderful while I did it, but I realized I don't. I reach out all over the world now, and I always, I have done for quite a long time, but it seems like I can have the schedule that I want just by doing it on Skype. So that's nice. I don't have to run around so much for my teaching. And I have some online relationships. True Fire is a company that produces mostly guitar and bass instructional material. And so I've got, I don't know, 8 or so courses with them and,
Oh.
various things. I have a Patreon page and a True Fire channel and all of those things that people can jump onto.
What is your Patreon page support?
I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, like when you have a Patreon page, you're asking for patrons.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I call it Tim Lerch Solo Guitar, and I put up a lesson a week or as often as I can. Solo guitar arrangements, accompaniment ideas, encouragement. And it's a small group of guys who, send their subscriptions in. But you know this. You probably have exactly this. You have a lot of little things,
Definitely.
and that and that's sort of it's we've always been in the gig economy, and now we're like really in the gig economy. Everybody seems to be.
I have a Patreon page that I've never really launched
Uh-huh.
because I think why is because I'm not sure how much or what I can put out
Hmm.
that I mean I have that would be valuable, but I do have a lot of productions that I do over time, and I guess that is something that could be supported. But I'm talking about things that I could give to the subscribers.
I think what you're doing right now is a viable Patreon content, and and you've got this archive,
Yeah,
and it's a way to monetize this labor of love that you're involved in. And since you have the archive, you could trickle it out, or you could put it all up at once, or whatever. But I mean, it's. I think that's an obvious one. I don't think it's unusual to think that you could do this and have a Patreon page that houses the archive, and then people can contribute, and it's a reasonable thing in terms of the terms that they
yeah,
have. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, try it. I had a Patreon page for about 5 or 6, maybe more years, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know. It just sat there, and
Yeah.
nothing happened. And then I talked to a couple of people. Adam Levy was very helpful, and then I just got the idea. Well, let's just do it. And so I did it, and it, poof, it's
Maybe
definitely
that's
worthwhile.
probably what I need to do.
Yeah.
Poof. Or
Poof.
maybe I'll say, Adam, tell me something.
Sure.
By the way, John March is here. Oh, thanks,
John,
John. He said he would support my Patreon page.
there you go.
And it's nice to see us both. And Neil Adams is here. I'm guessing that's a friend of yours.
Neil Adams or Neil Anderson?
Adams.
Adams. I'm not sure if that name isn't ringing a bell. Hi, Neil. Nice to meet you.
He said, great to hear you. Are you, do you, have you, have you always considered yourself a jazz player? Do you consider yourself a jazz player? Do you define that? What's your feeling on definitions of jazz and your
Yeah.
playing?
I'm not. I don't have a hard line on that. I love jazz music. I got captured by it as a youth. When I heard Charlie Parker, it just absolutely just blew my mind, and I loved. I was always kind of a fish out of water with rock and roll and all that. Although I've done, my time in classic rock and
Yeah.
R&B bands to
You
make
have
a
to,
living
you
and
have to
stuff.
do that if you're a guitar player.
Yeah, but I always felt a little out of sorts doing it. I loved blues and jazz from the earliest time. So that's what it was called when I learned about it. And so I'm not offended by the name or the word or any of those kinds of things. I also recognize to some extent that I'm kind of as a white suburban kid growing up, I was never going to be, really indoctrinated on a jazz scene and, be on 52nd Street and, in the heyday and jump from club to club and brush shoulders with all the greats. That's not going to be something that I ever did or could do. So I just tried to love the music. And at this point, though, the way I see it is, although I'm not afraid to use the term, because as I look at some of the marketing that has to go on in order to make a living, that the words are important. Like I got a book coming out, and it's basically a chord dictionary, which I almost immediately refused to do. But then the idea was, I chewed on it for a while, and I decided to give it a try. And I won't go on and on about it, but it's an interesting way of approaching the chord dictionary. And they wanted to use certain words in the title because those words are searchable in the Amazon, algorithm or whatever. Unfortunately, I hate some of those words. Like I hate chord melody. I don't want, you know what I mean? I just hate it. But, you got to make a compromise. So anyway, I think what we called the book was Melodic Jazz Guitar Chord Dictionary. And it was like we wanted to get melodic in there because that was something that it's based on the melody note that's produced by the chord. And that's how the book is organized, right? So if someone's looking to play solo guitar and they want to put a ninth on top of a minor chord, all of them are together. All the minor chords with the 9 on top are all together in the book. So that's kind of the hook of the book. So we wanted it to say melodic something, but then they insisted on using jazz guitar, because that's the pigeonhole that we get stuck in. So without going on too long about that, I love jazz music, and I feel in my heart that I approach the music in a way that a jazz musician would, at least my version of it. I'm not as inclined to try and be so cutting edge and new and I have a kind of old fashioned idea about it. I think Louis Armstrong and and Lester Young and Art Tatum and Charlie Parker are kind of, where I, focus my energy, rather than the sort of the most modern thing or whatever. Although I appreciate that, So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think someone else might have a better, more clear idea about whether I'm a jazz musician or not when they hear me play. Who knows? I mean, the blues guys all think I'm a jazz guy, and the jazz guys all think I'm a blues guy, and and the solo guitar people think
I
I'm.
don't know what to
I
call
don't.
it.
Yeah, what are we doing with that Telecaster? I'm kind of a little bit of an outsider because the jazz guitar world is really kind of like, in some ways, not. I don't mean to be, say this in a negative way, but jazz guitar is kind of like archtop guitar.
Right. The kind
It
of
can be.
real jazz
Yeah.
guitar. Yeah.
Rather than the music, the instrument is really a focus. And to some people's minds, if you don't play an archtop guitar, then how could you possibly be playing jazz?
I get
I
that.
know that's okay.
That's a Telecaster you're
Yeah,
holding.
this is the Telecaster.
Yeah.
And,
And Ted Green
yeah,
played the Telecaster a lot.
I
Yeah.
studied with Ted, and he influenced me a lot. And one of the things that he influenced me in was the sound that he got. And I couldn't get it out of a Gibson ES 175, which is what I was playing, in
Yeah.
the old days. But when I got on a Telecaster, I could get that sound.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I wanted to imitate Ted so much because nobody can do that. But there's a certain quality to the tone and the sustain and the playability of this guitar that I have. Another guitar I might have to wrestle with. So yeah. But anyway, what did we just go all over the place with that
That's
question?
okay. No, we're on the same kind of path. Actually, Mark Baldrich is he's just adding another question along this line. Do you feel the term jazz, because of its negative connotation, hurts you increasing your audience?
Yeah, I don't usually book myself as a jazz guitar player, but I know that I don't think it's negative. I think you either like it or you don't. And when are you going to trick? You can't trick people into, like saying it's one thing and then you get there and you play the way you play, and they're going to say, "Oh,
Right.
good," or "Dang it, I thought this was going to be that." So I don't know. I really don't think there's a negative connotation to jazz music. I think that it's a small and selective audience. The people who love it really love it and have a refined sense of it. And the people who don't get it, I have a really funny story. I worked in a record store when I was young, and a young gal came in, like a teenage type, and she bought a Van Halen record. But she came back a couple of days later, and she was all upset, and because inside this Van Halen record was a Bill Evans record. And they were on the same record label, and somehow there was a mistake, and a Bill Evans record got put into this, the third Van Halen record or something like that. And she kind of tossed it on the counter. She said, "It's not a Van Halen record, and I don't know what it is. It's not even country. It's worse than country." And this was the teenage girl who was, had everything you could imagine to be disappointed by this Bill Evans record. She wanted to hear David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen and rock and roll, and she got this beautiful, sublime, piano record, which just made her mad. So I
That's very funny.
yeah, I don't think we're ever going to convince anybody or sort of trick anybody or anything. I tend to play on the prettier side and on the sort of song-based side of things.
Yeah.
So I'm not playing, 20-minute solos, and I just like to play songs and improvise on the melody of the song, And
Yeah.
so for me, that's a way for me to cut through some of that,
Script definition.
yeah.
Yeah. John March said he had a university jazz cat ask him when I was going to get a real jazz guitar, looking at my Strat, LOL, and Ted always liked that I played stuff on my Strat.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And it brings to mind, of course, Frizzell and Schofield, because, they're both kind of mixed. And Frizzell, I mean, he's got some country in him. Same with Adam Levy, really.
Yeah.
And Schofield obviously has some rock and blues, and I actually really believe that music in general is headed toward kind of a blending of all different things, ethnic and everything. And I feel like we are reflecting what's going on in the world. And that's what's going on in the world, regardless of the stupid weirdo shit that is happening. The real people, people who are like conscious, they want to kind of blend together and get to know each other, and there's a marriage of stuff. And I feel that's where music is heading anyway.
Well, I think ultimately, giving throughout this conversation, having had a chance to sort of, digest a little bit, I think what I'm most interested in is trying to play some music that is true about me.
Yeah.
That's authentic and true about me. And so if I look at it, the first music that really captured me was pop music on the radio. And there's some things I have very fond memories about, good pop songs that might have been on AM radio in 1963 or 4.
Right.
Or 5 or 6 or whatever. I was born in 1959. So, and then I heard blues and classic country music, because that's, was in in the wind, and
Yeah.
I love things like that.
Yeah.
And then I heard Charlie Parker and Art Tatum, and I really, really loved that. And sort of for a while I was kind of like but that really captured me, and I kind of went into this thing that I think a lot of people kind of get into, where they wanted to be a hipster. I don't mean hipster like the current thing, but like, have a beret and
Yeah.
say, yeah, man, and be Charlie Parker, and I read Bird Lives about 5 or 6 times and trying, and then of course you continue and you grow, and ultimately I have all this stuff, including Bach and Nelson Riddle and old American songs and, Bulgarian women's choir and, Ornette Coleman and all this stuff that I love. And all I'm trying to do is play in an improvisational music that expresses something about that. I love Hank Williams. So what would happen inside of my brain if I'm playing a Hank Williams song and a little Charlie Parker influence sneaks in there? Louis Armstrong played on Jimmy Rogers' records. I mean, there was this incredible, flow of all of that stuff. And I love all that stuff. I like old things and old American music. And so now I'm on a club date or a concert or some kind of a gig where it's, me doing me,
Yeah.
and the set list is kind of silly, like I think I want to say, take a song like, I was just doing this morning. I'll just play a verse of it. It's like, busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train, feeling nearly faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed the diesel down just before it rained. It rode us all the way to New Orleans. I mean, what's wrong with that?
So cool, man. I was talking to Gerald Clayton, the pianist, and he said what he would rather call jazz, or what he plays, just the word free, which you basically said improvisational. I think, terms are It's just words and they represent
They
ideas.
do, and then there's all lately we're a lot more sensitive about, or at least I am, and I think people I associate with are sensitive about the meaning behind the meaning, and there's cultural appropriation and all of these kinds of things, which really, I mean,
Sometimes it's,
it's
yeah,
important to at least to be open to the conversation.
yeah,
For instance, Pearl Django has been a long time. They have a 25 plus year history of playing music that had been known as gypsy jazz.
yeah,
And lately, though, because of some pushback and also some information and some sensitivities, whatnot, we're calling it hot club jazz in our advertisements because people it's a better name for it in some ways for us to use.
yeah,
Whereas Stockelo Rosenberg can, if he wants to, he can call what he does gypsy jazz because that's his heritage,
yeah,
And some people say, "Oh my God, that's just so PC." Come on, I don't know. I think that it means the words mean things,
yeah,
and there's we have enough view of the history of the meaning of certain words that at least we can be sensitive about. So this is the whole business of what do you call the music, and I'm with you. I mean, if we stopped calling it jazz tomorrow, I wouldn't be hurt at all. Because I don't think of the word in my mind.
yeah.
Because I'm going to play
Yeah,
some jazz.
I mean, it leads one into thinking, like the definition of these terms. Like, it would be nice to know that somebody is coming from a jazz perspective,
Yeah,
but it's not totally necessary if the person playing is an accomplished, um, I guess, an accomplished player who improvises well as well, you
yeah.
know. Um, and it kind of, to me, it reflects on what would be good for the general populace to live like that, to be good at certain things and to be able to improvise and be good at things that come up, show up.
We improvise all the time. Everybody
Yeah,
does.
yeah, yeah.
But there
Every
are
day.
certain sort of attributes, musical attributes that we can associate with that word jazz, but it's so wide.
Yeah.
Um, and the I mean, is it Louis Armstrong attributes, or is it John Coltrane's attributes or Bill Evans' attributes,
Yeah.
Charlie
Yeah.
Parker, or is it your own?
Mm-hmm.
And then how does that reflect? And of course, that's what we're as mature musicians we're hoping that we aren't just standing up there pretending to be you
Yeah.
know some old dead and gone musician. We have reference to that, but we're ultimately being ourselves. And if that's what's going on, then call it whatever you want. When I played just a minute ago, I wasn't thinking words except the words of the song. I was in a feeling of
Communication. What do you want to do?
also just a
Communicate.
bodily feeling of how the music I wanted it to feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if that has to have a name. Or
John asks a
put it on a
question.
poster.
John asks, Tim, how do you balance your interest in and exploration of improvisation and risk taking? Where do you like to explore the most?
Mm.
Good question.
Um, when I was younger, I was much more interested in um, uh, sort of being on the cutting edge or surprising myself or thinking I was doing something that nobody else did or any of those kinds of things. Um, and I think the risk now is on a subtler level
Mm-hmm.
because you can be very interested in risk taking and in my experience it's very easy to start sounding bad or
Yeah.
less supportive of your fellow musicians. That's a thing that I think is really powerful to embrace is how can I play in a way that helps this group sound good. And that means you have to have some insight and some empathy to who you're with. For instance, in Pearl Django, I don't think it would help the band if I started playing, stuff that maybe that they were shocked by or whatever. So I just realized, okay, well, this band it's appropriate for me to play a certain way in this band to kind of match up with everybody. And I try to do that, and I take it as kind of a beautiful challenge.
Yeah.
But I do really love playing completely free. I very often for my own entertainment and amusement and sort of, I call it musing, I'll play what most people might call free. And I love doing that. So there's a kind of safety that you can feel that allows for risk taking. And if the safety isn't there, like for instance, when I play with John Stoll, I always feel very, very safe. And I also feel like no matter what I do, he's there with me. Jamie's the same way.
Yeah.
Jamie Findlay. So that means that because of that safety, I can take chances.
Yeah.
If I'm by myself and everything's feeling right, my fingers are complying, my strings are at the right stage of worn outness, and the amp is sounding good, and the people are listening, well, then I'll go wherever my imagination takes me and hope my fingers will comply. I don't play arrangements, so that would be the death of me, I think. I couldn't stand it. I would be bored. I get bored really easily. So the hardest thing about playing a lot of solo guitar gigs is that I start getting bored with a musician, and that's what compels me to try and do things different ways, I play little games like I'll start with Georgia on my mind, and then I'll modulate, and this will be this long stream of consciousness, especially like on a background music gig or some kind of restaurant. Georgia on my mind, rainy night in Georgia. Here's that rainy day, night and day. And I start spinning these tunes from one to the next based on the title, and I just play a long stream of tunes, try to do something interesting to change key or modulate or change tempo or whatever in between them. And I find that that's a really interesting kind of risk taking, because I might end up doing around midnight in the key of A minor, and I've never played that in that key. Yeah. So I'd have to really take a risk to do that. But it's not like hopefully it doesn't sound to the casual listener like I'm, hanging by my toes. You know what I mean? I want to be able to have a level of
clarity,
acceptable level of playing. Anyway, I hope that's helpful, John.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a vocal group called Fish to Birds, and at the most we were seven of us, because of the pandemic. It's changed, but we've been together about 8 years, and got together because of a workshop that an improvisational singer named Rhiannon created. And then we just decided to keep going. But what we do is we start with whatever somebody wants, and then I'll join in. It's a cappella. And we don't exactly have rules, but we have things that we know work, like getting some harmony going with somebody's doing bobet, dudit, and so we might all join in on that, or do a little harmony, or do something counter to it, have like a kind of what we call a motor, boom, something.
Yeah.
And we call it Fish to Birds from the Escher painting,
Oh, gotcha.
how it changes.
And that morphing feeling.
Yeah, that's what we do. We morph all the time.
It's 7 or 8 singers.
7. Yeah,
seven singers, no instrumental accompaniment.
Correct.
Oh, that's
Correct.
wonderful.
Yeah, we have had guest artists who have joined in with the improvisation, like Brad Dutz. Do you know Brad?
No, I don't think I do. Maybe the name rings a bell, but
So he's actually in Washington now, You should meet Brad. I'm going to write down to hook you up.
Okay.
He's one of my very favorite percussionists. He lived here for a long, long time and somewhat recently moved up there. But and he plays marimbas too and vibes. But, he is so good at improvisation and creating something, and he's a guy who really lives in that beautiful universe.
Nice.
So sometimes somebody like that, or a pianist who's willing to, you know, improvise with us. And
This sounds perfect though, because they aren't necessarily introducing harmony or notes to the picture, because you've got plenty of other notes coming. You've got 8 notes already or whatever available. So that's interesting. Yeah.
exactly. But we have to have, I mean, when we're performing, we have to have audiences that are willing to see us fall. Because we're not going to be perfect because we're not doing arrangements.
Right.
We're
Right.
just doing what's in the moment. And, um, we have our great gigs, we have our medium gigs, we have our shitty gigs, not very many, um, you know, uh, but it's the freedom to do that. And the more, of course, the more you do it, the better you get at creating a more substantial path. But that doesn't mean you always will. Like you were saying, you're going from song to song, and hopefully it'll be beautiful, and you'll
I
create.
suppose also if the more you do it, the more likely, human beings being what we are, the more likely to fall into successes from the past and routines that worked before. And so the arrangement, although it's not an arrangement, it develops itself over time into some standardized approaches. And I think then you have to have this, if you want to, have this flag that goes up and says, okay, let's mix it up. Because, you know what I mean?
I do. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, that's always something interesting, especially to teach singers, because singers coming up may be different than guitar players coming up, but singers they really don't want to have egg on their face. And so, but it's like, well, you just sang that line. That's kind of an improvisational line, but you just sang it right before. So, and it's not part of a motif. So it's just like a habit. And you don't want to have a habit. If you're a jazz singer, or whatever we want to call this form, you don't want to, you want to be awake and aware, which is difficult. It's difficult to be aware of everything. I think as I grew older, that's why I appreciated Carmen McRae more and more. She's always in the moment.
Yeah.
Every single word has an importance. Not,
Yeah,
she
and
doesn't
she's
just
a
throw
jazz
away
musician.
words.
She struck me as a jazz musician whose instrument was her voice.
Yeah.
And I mean, even to the extent that she would sing something in a key spontaneously that wasn't her best key,
Yeah. Yeah.
and push herself or even have some problems, but she was in it. Sometimes I feel, not with in the best of situations, but sometimes I feel when I'm accompanying a singer that I'm kind of a backing track for them, like a karaoke, because
Yeah.
they've got their thing,
Yeah.
and I understand that, because like you said, nobody wants to have egg in their face. I always tell people, like my students or whatever, is I say, well, whoever's ass is furthest out in front then that's who you try and support, right?
Yeah.
And the singer is, they're not in the back row; they're right up in there, and I know that even though let's say someone's singing standards with jazz musicians, they might not be really embracing the jazz ethos
Yeah.
of spontaneity or risk taking or being willing to play a song in a different key or a different tempo or a different groove than they might have planned. Some though, I mean, some people are just okay, let's go for it. And I also understand that, I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience here. I've got about 7 good notes. On a good night, I've got about 7 good ones, and then beyond that, I'm screwed. So I fought with that for a long time because I didn't understand that in order to be able to sing a song, I had to pick the right key to do it in. Because I was always just playing whatever key. But then as a singer of limited capacities, I have to be very careful to make sure that I do one of 2 things: pick the right key, or be willing to alter the melody in a clever and hopefully interesting way so that I don't screw up.
It's interesting, isn't it? The voice is, excuse me, an interesting instrument. But the guitar, talking about
Maybe I'll play a little coughing accompaniment here.
Thank you. I think actually the guitar is, I was talking about this the other day, I think it's one of the most difficult instruments there is. There's so many possibilities on the guitar. And I always make a guitar joke with my friends about no matter how old you are as a guitarist, if you're 95, you can meet somebody and go, look at this new voicing I found.
Yeah, it is true. And it's also interesting that, say, if we take guitar, you can learn how to play, a 3-chord song in a couple of weeks. And that's part of our culture. I mean, there are people, we know their names and they're famous, who learned 4 or 5 chords and began writing songs, and they were clever and they had the ability to do that, and that was what they did.
Yeah.
And no one would ever consider, like, a clarinetist being even, you couldn't hardly even stay in the same room with them after 3 or 4 weeks. Much less want to hear what they came up with, on the radio. And so, I mean, some people say the clarinet or the oboe is the hardest instrument because you just sound like a goose for so long. And you really have to get, over the technical parameters. And then, I guess it's, from what I understand, it's possible to sound like a goose even after years, like on a bad day, you know what I mean? But so I think guitar is almost 2 or 3 different instruments, maybe more. And there's the sort of the strumming guitar, which people think of, and that is famous because that's what most pop musicians who write and sing songs do. They just strum the simple chords. And then there's classical guitar, there's hot country picking, and there's heavy metal shredding, and there's all those kind of technical things that are these different avenues to go down, So it is really, really wide, and there are a few people who can do a lot of those things, and most people pick a few and stick with them,
Yeah.
I just have this really one-track mind about it. I hear something in my imagination that I find very compelling, and I just spent my whole life trying to make my fingers do that so that it sounds like the thing I can hear in my head.
There's a really interesting guitarist in New Orleans.
Phil?
Phil? Yeah.
Yeah, I love Phil, man.
Yeah, I interviewed
Phil,
him.
Phil
too.
Degree is his name, yeah. So,
Really interesting. Yeah.
I
Very
have
much along these lines,
Yeah, I have a recording of Phil and Ted hanging out. And it's quite lovely. And Phil was good at that time, but he hadn't quite gotten it together. He was really good, but he hadn't quite gotten his own signature thing with the extra strings and the crazy arrangements and that brilliant kind of cartoon mind that he has. But Ted loved what he was doing, and they had a fun time playing together.
Yeah, I had a good time talking to him. He's got a great head,
Yeah.
John, by the way, had to go back to work. Great to hear both chatting. It amazes me that Ted still works magic in the world and connects us. Tim, I hope to see you at the Archtop Festival. Cathy, hope to hear you sing. Come to Colorado. Okay. And
John. Thanks for stopping by, John.
and my friend Roland is saying, and of course, then there's Paul Simon. Yeah, well, he's kind of a whole
Yeah, he is.
beautiful
Paul is as guitar players go. I think Paul and James Taylor and quite a few others are actually guitar players, and they're interested in the orchestrational or orchestral aspect of the guitar, and they use it in a beautiful way. So forgive me if I painted, with too broad of a brush in that analogy earlier.
We'll forgive you. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, your playing and singing is great, but I'm curious, are there things of you with the band on YouTube?
Yeah, there's a fair amount of Pearl Django material. It's not really associated. It might, like, if you search for me, you're going to get kind of what I put up on YouTube, for instance. I'm on 3 Pearl Django records. I have an organ trio record. I've done all sorts of sessions and things on many of which I hope never. I have an organ trio record. I've done all sorts of sessions and things on many of which I hope never. I have an organ trio record.
Oh, you're in a loop.
Sorry, I got it.
It's okay. But the thing is especially during the pandemic, if I wanted to put some music out into the world, and I love solo guitar, and that's kind of one of my things. I'm here, I'm sitting in front of my camera, and I can just do it. I don't have to. I like playing duos, though. I have a really fun duo with Jamie, as I was saying, and I've been playing with a beautiful bass player named Keith Lowe lately. I play with a couple of different bass players, and that gives me a chance to sort of play and sing some of these songs.
Do you have anything of you? Oh, there's
one.
10
That's
years
a
ago.
blues. That's a blues thing.
Do you have anything, just curious, with Jamie on?
Yeah, in fact, I do. If you type in, I think Jamie and I have 3 or 4 things up that I know about. There's some things with John and I as well. But play that one. Play I Can't Help It.
Okay.
The next one down. Yeah, that one is, we were talking about Hank Williams. And Jamie and I really
Yay!
Oh, I love playing with Jamie. I love all that counterpoint and the sort of the Vulcan mind meld that we get into, where we have so much common stuff,
Harmony, or yeah,
and yet it's different enough that we can really kind of read each other's minds, and it's really satisfying to do. And the time feel is, there's a certain agreement about the way we feel the time, and I just love playing with Jamie. It's nice.
yeah. You also have Stephen Rosenberg here, jazz guitar king of YouTube. He's talking about you.
Oh, there you go. That's my new moniker. I'll take it.
Oh, and Brad Rebuchin is here.
Oh, hi, Brad. I love
my
your playing,
favorites.
man. I've heard some stuff that you've done. It's very nice.
He's a great player. Yeah, he's one of my favorite players. Thought of you and David Becker.
Oh, David Becker and I are old friends.
Oh,
We he was not I went to GIT for a year, and David had been at GIT
yeah.
previous to me, although he was probably about 12 when he went. He was very young, but he would come back and visit with Joe Diorio, and I was constantly in Joe's room. So David and I struck up a friendship and played duets, occasionally and whatnot, and we just stayed in touch. He's an inspiration because he really takes it seriously, his career and his presentation. He's been a leader. He's been he had that trio, and he's just been unapologetically, doing that really seriously since I knew him back in 1984 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I agree. Isn't it interesting when people are like that? I love how you said apologetic. Jeff Richman is like that too. And I went to college with him, and his guitar playing was always really, well, he's definitely one of my favorite players, but he always created these amazing groups. I mean, and records, and just just
Yeah, yeah.
unapologetic. I love that. That's a
Right.
really
I mean, it's like
yeah.
I've always been a little bit like, nah, nobody wants to hear this, and kind of shy and a little, and retiring. And I'd get myself into situations, if I was lucky, I could, what do you call it, hitch your wagon to somebody else's
Yeah, yeah.
thing. But David, I don't think he's ever. I don't know this for sure, but he's always had that band, his trio, and he really, hits it hard, and I don't think he ever like slogged like I did, like playing in a Elvis, tribute band in the casinos. I mean, I don't mind doing that. I learned a lot doing that,
Yeah, yeah.
and I had to do it because I had to pay the rent. But anyway, I like David. He's a cool
Yeah.
guy.
Everybody's path is different. I mean, I
Sure.
had a girlfriend who was a stupendous singer, one of the best jazz singers ever. But as far as like you're talking about like moving ahead and creating stuff, she did about this much
Right.
of compared to what I did about this.
Uh,
And but her attention was this instead of my attention like this. And actually that was one of the, early philosophical lessons I learned, which was, competition is stupid. It's just not even a question. It's just your own personal path. If you're
Right.
not here, you just haven't done the work, whatever it is your path has called for that.
I agree with you. I have resigned myself, not in a bad way, but I sort of come to the conclusion that the best thing for me to do is to be as honest and authentic about what I love to do, and put it out there, and be willing to say yes to opportunities. But in some ways, I also want the interest to come to me a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd prefer to play, less often for more appreciative audiences than to always be sort of throwing myself at everybody. That's
Yeah.
just the way I feel. That's my personality. But other people that I know are just, they love performing so much and they want to do it as much as they can, and they just do it, and they do it with enthusiasm, and that's great too.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a question for you I didn't see this because it was on LinkedIn and it came on a different window. Craig Walker, he said, tell us about that cutaway nylon. Is there a story there?
Uh,
I guess
the
what you
guitar I
were
was
playing.
playing in the Jamie video.
Probably, yeah.
Um,
It's a different, is it a different scale?
no, I want to make sure before I start talking about something, I want to make sure what this person is asking about. So
Well, he said,
maybe
is
ask
there
him
a
if it's
story? Yeah. You want me to say something?
ask him if it's the guitar I was playing in the video with Jamie.
It probably is because you haven't played a nylon otherwise.
Well, yeah, maybe he's thinking of something else, but let me get it and I'll talk about it.
Oh, okay. So Craig, he said, yeah, that. And then he said, odd tone hole.
Oh yeah, that right, okay. I know what he's talking about now.
Okay. Sorry, Craig. That's the LinkedIn communication comes in on a different window. I've actually never seen communication from LinkedIn. So you're the first. After 424 guests, this is the 424th. So he's getting that. I thought you were on the moon there, man. With your background.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the guitar, Craig. This is not a nylon string guitar. This is a steel string archtop guitar made by Steven Anderson, who just retired from building. He is a longtime Seattle builder. And in fact, he invented this or created this design of an oval hole that's up on the top bout. It's a beautiful guitar. It's a full scale. This guitar is 25 and change inches long. Boy, it's still in tune too. And it's a 14-inch lower bout, which makes it a little smaller than your average archtop. But it's really beautiful. How about that that's a
Wow.
one-piece maple back. And it has an acoustic sort of sound as well as the more plugged in. I use this guitar not recently, but quite frequently prior to the pandemic, actually, with Pearl Django, because even though it's not a very loud guitar, it has that sort of acoustic quality that the guys told me that they liked the way it worked in the rhythm section, because we're often doing these kinds of, and that doesn't sound very good with just an electric guitar. So there has to be some that kind of stuff. Anyway, Steven Anderson, if you can find one of his guitars, if you're curious about it, these are really beautiful, and he's a great maker. He stopped making them because he's just ready to retire, and so I have a feeling the value of these guitars might start going up because he's not making any more.
Craig said that they have a guy in Plains, Montana, who builds travel guitars like that with great sound. It's great sound.
Well, the story on this one, Craig, is that Bill Frisell lived in Seattle for quite a few years, and he befriended Steve Anderson, who was making guitars, and they lived in the same neighborhood near Ballard. And Bill came to Steven and asked him. Steven said, "Can you build me something that would fit in the overhead bin?" This was back. This was back in the day when you could still, put a guitar in the overhead bin.
Yeah.
Now they don't allow. But anyway, so what's happening on this guitar is that it's a full-scale guitar. It's not a small guitar in terms of the playing surface. But he trimmed. Normally there'd be a tailpiece, and the guitar would be longer. And so, in order to kind of shorten this thing, to make it travelable, he made this beautiful situation where the tailpiece actually is at the back end of the guitar, whereas normally. On a larger guitar, great! It would be that much guitar behind the tailpiece, and as you can see, this is, there's nothing behind the tailpiece, so you can see a comparison. And so this guitar, it's called the Little Archie.
Oh.
Little Archie, and then he made a couple of other models. One he calls the Electric Archie, which is similar but has a pickup sort of stuck in the guitar. Anyway, that's Steve Anderson's.
Well, and my friend Roland says, are you familiar with the Four Seasons guitars created by John Monteleone?
I saw the videos that came out when they toured. So a group of 4 guitar players. Julian Lage was in it.
Oh yeah. Anthony Wilson.
Anthony Wilson was sort of the spearhead. I think he might have written some of the arrangements.
Yeah, he did.
And then a couple of other guys I don't recall, but I heard those, and they're beautiful guitars. One of the things I like about Steve's guitars is they're very simple and sort of, they're not ornate.
Yeah.
I really like that. And, usually these, $50,000 guitars they have $40,000 worth of gold on them or something, But I'll take the $10,000 worth of a good guitar. Anyway, that's a
really beautiful sound.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite have the sustain that the Telecaster does, but I play it quite frequently, and it definitely has its charms, The note separation is nice. Anyway, that's
nice. I still remember when I was with Ron Peters looking at the back of his L5 and just like joining in his relishing of the beautiful.
Yeah, there's something about it that drives us crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very organic. You can hold it in your arms. I mean, it's.
I can tune this up a little bit. I think it's close to being in tune, but it might be flat. I wouldn't want to offend anybody with out of tune notes. Oh, it's a little sharp. Interesting. Great. You tune in. Finally, someone gets on their lunch break and they can tune in and they hear some bozo tuning.
One of the favorite guitar players in LA is Larry Coons.
Yeah,
I've done a lot of work with him and
beautiful player.
recorded with him. Yeah, he's a really beautiful player, and I've known him for so long, so I've seen and heard his ideas change, which has been really interesting. Like his comping style is unusual, and not to mention his harmonic thing. But and he one time I did a gig with he and his dad, which was heaven. They were from the same musical universe. It was like, wow, this was.
Yeah. I remember, I was friends with Jimmy Weibel back.
I was just going to ask about
still
Jimmy.
playing.
Yeah.
Before his wife got sick,
Oh.
he was still out on the scene, and he called me one day and said, "Hey Tim, I'm playing a gig with, I think the gig was with Larry.
Uh-huh.
It might have been with his dad."
Yeah.
Or maybe they were both there or something. But Jimmy and no rhythm section, just two guitars. And Jimmy had just gotten his first Boris guitar.
Yeah.
And I came out and listened and enjoyed it quite a bit. And I believe Larry played, but he was younger than me at the time, so maybe a couple of notches younger. But he was really, really good as a teenage guitar player, and he only got better and better. Now he's just an absolute master.
Yeah.
And then I remember the reason I remembered is Jimmy came over to my table and greeted me, and he said in his inimitable way, he said, "Tim, I just got this new guitar and I'd love it if you would play for me." So I got up on the break and played, 3 or 4 tunes.
Yeah.
But that was the only time I was probably ever in the same room as Larry. But I've admired him from afar because I left LA just a few years after that, and I know he's pretty much, that's his town.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about all the great guitar players that have graced us, especially I don't know, I probably don't know as many on the East Coast, but Joe Diorio and John Chiodini and John Pisano, and there are some really incredibly stupendous guitar players who have gifted the world with, their orchestrations. I'll say that.
I'm
I'll
with
put
you
it that
on
way.
that
Really, really beautiful.
It is. Now we have, the like Bruce Foreman's a pal of mine, and Bruce is just storming around like he always has, playing really, really great. He's got Barney Kessel's guitar now, and of course it's his guitar now, but and he's
Right.
taking good care of it, And Ron
Julian
Eschde's
Lage, right?
Ron
Who's a
Eschde's
friend
still
of yours. Yeah.
kicking. Julian is like the next generation. He's
Yeah.
it's funny because Julian was always quite stupendous. I mean, really, like precocious or prodigious or whatever you want to say. He got good when he was young, and he had opportunities that he said yes to and put himself out there. He's got the energy. He really loves to play. He likes to play with other people. Right now, he's touring this record that he put out about a year ago now. He put out a record on Blue Note, which is kind of a big break for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just heard a little clip of him playing. I think he's either just finished a short tour of Europe or is in the middle of one. And oh my God, they were playing an Ornette Coleman tune as an encore. And the band, it's not just that he's really good, because he really is, but he's got a band now that's really good.
Yeah.
They've developed this thing by playing, night after night, which is pretty incredible that anybody can pull that off, that anybody can
Yeah.
be willing to get out there and do it and work hard and risk life and death these days and just stay out there and really play. And he's resilient and obviously loves it. And I'm inspired by that guy. I really like him as a man, but I'm inspired by him as a musician. It's really quite wonderful what he's doing, you know, and the band is starting to do some stuff that, I mean, it's incredible what they're doing.
That's great. You
And
know,
it's rooted.
Anthony Wilson also comes to mind because Anthony, first of all, Anthony is a beautiful person, and his playing, I think he's one of my favorite guitar players. His melodic ideas are beautiful, and he also, you know, in recent years, probably actually more like 7 or 8 or 9 years, he started being a songwriter.
I heard some of the stuff that he's
Yeah,
doing
and
in that
singer.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, he even recently went to Memphis for 3 months to kind of get into his roots and, but his, when he play, like we were talking about before, when he plays that music, it has all of who he is in there. And it's really, it's quite yummy, you know?
No, I
And
agree. I
I
agree.
think the effect of accomplishing that and being truthful is, I mean, I know I'm oversensitive, okay, you know, because, you know, I love this. But still, even if you took my oversensitivity down a few notches, you still would get affected by it because it hits at the truth, you know, flow going in. So it's just, to me, it's like weepy stuff, you know, it's just like, you know, it takes your breath away, you know?
Yeah, and I wish you the best of luck with that. I think that there are some folks who get close to the world of success in songwriting, for instance, or the success as you know, that maybe we're backline people, and then
Yeah.
we get a nice gig and we see where the money really goes. You know, and think, oh well, I'm gonna start writing songs now because that's really where you want to be to position yourself for a better career or something like that. I've seen people who do that, and it's not really honest, or it's not really they're not very good at it, or they try and then they fail and they go back to doing what they and but there are a couple of guys, like I know Adam Levy is also kind of, having been a sideman, he's starting to put his own, you know, he's starting to present himself to the world as a songwriter, a singer, a person who you know, whose name is on the bill. And Anthony, I just wish them all the best, you know, because their heart is so sincere about it and they're good at it. So, you know, it would be crushing if somebody who had, you know, who had that didn't really kind of get it, you know, have some opportunities. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know, I
Well,
mean, every once in a while somebody comes along and it's like, you know, I don't, from what I understand, Jeff Buckley, for instance, he didn't really start singing until later on. He was more of a guitar player.
hmm,
And then all of a sudden he opened his mouth and someone said, wait, what the fuck? You know, do that more. And he complied. There's another guy, Sean Costello. He's on the blues side of things. Sean Costello unfortunately passed away. Um, but he started out with Susan Tedeschi,
oh,
and then he turned himself into this incredible rootsy blues and R&B guitar and vocalist, and it's chilling how good he is, you know.
yeah.
But he started out as a good guitar player, and then suddenly, oh, okay, if the singer didn't show up, well, I'm gonna sing, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, game on, you know. And so I think it's cool when people stretch beyond whatever it is that they're comfortable doing or whatever they've
Yeah.
been doing, you know. I think that's
Um,
I support that.
there's a drummer with Schofield, who I
Oh, I
saw
know what
last
you're
week,
talking about. Yeah, that guy.
Kevin something, and he sang a blues. It was like John said, "Oh, now we have a surprise for you," and he started singing, and I'm like, "What? This guy
Yeah.
is like,
Oh,
he's not just singing a song. He is so good at
I
singing."
saw a video of him. He was playing drums and keyboards at the same and singing. He had a keyboard set up so he could play, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
It was really, really good. I mean, it wasn't just novelty good. It was really good, you know. And
Yeah,
I guess I was surprised and happy that, you know, Scope pulled him in and put him in his band for this at least for this tour, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's cool.
Crazy good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, incredible.
There's so many good musicians in the world.
I know, it's
There are
crazy.
so many.
Craig
Like
is
I love the Punch Brothers. Do you know who the Punch Brothers are?
I don't think so.
Chris Thiele is a mandolinist, and his guitar player is Critter Eldridge, who's also a Julian Lage friend and duet partner. And he's got, it's basically a bluegrass band, but it's not a bluegrass band. You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
this beautiful modern
Oh,
pop, and but it's not just. It's so deep. It's so deep. And
oh, I'm
we
gonna
went
check
to
it
see
out.
them at the Moore Theater in Seattle a couple of months ago. There was one microphone on stage.
Yeah.
And so they moved around the microphone like bluegrass bands would do. And everybody in the band, they all sing great, they all play great. It was a transcendent performance. It was really, really good. So
Oh, I'm gonna go look at
one
that.
for the Punch Brothers if you ever get a chance.
Yeah.
Check 'em out.
I saw a weird group like that. Well, not exactly. Well, anyway, they're called Daka Braka. Do you know that name?
I haven't heard them though.
So very hard to describe, but um, there's four of them. There's three women and a guy. They're from the Ukraine.
Mhm.
The three women, just visually, it's interesting because the women are wearing this costume that looks like Ukrainian dress with these tall, furry hats,
Uh-huh.
like kind of cone like. The one girl plays. They all say. Everybody sings. One woman plays cello. The other one plays keyboard and really great hand drum, and the other one plays a drum set, and then the guy plays mostly accordions and a little bit of harmonica, and they're all very. The women singing is kind of like the Bulgarian kind of
Uh-huh.
that high,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And the guy is really interesting. Sometimes he sings really high and in kind of an unusual voice, and the material is Ukrainian and contemporary rock a little, or maybe improvisation. It's really interesting, and some of it is drone like.
Mhm.
And we saw them at a large theater, the Alex Theater, and they had a backdrop with beautiful film, illustrative mostly type of film, probably talking about the songs. I don't know because I don't speak Ukrainian, but there was 1,300 people in the audience,
Oh,
and people were totally like they were standing up and dancing, and me and my friends, we loved it. It was that's what I mean about this whole world thing. It's all coming together, and it's joining, and when it's truthful, it hits you, right? It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
yeah. And we have this wonderful thing now which allows us to touch that, and maybe it's an instrumental part of why it's happening is we have YouTube now.
Yeah.
And you can go down the rabbit hole, and find out all sorts of things if you're willing. You could also look at hours and hours of crap if you want to. You know what I
That's so
mean?
true. Yes.
But it is possible to if you're creative with your searching, and then once you search for something and find it, YouTube very very benevolently gives you more of that. so you know what I mean? They
Yeah.
suggest. So it is. I mean, God, I used to have to buy the record, when I was a
Exactly.
teenager wanting to hear,
Yeah. Well,
hear
even
something.
before that, I worked for Wallach's Music City in Hollywood when I first came here. You could actually take a record and go listen to it.
That we had that too, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They
I
still do
worked
that
at
in
Aaron
Japan.
Records in Hollywood. Do you
Yeah.
remember Aaron Records?
Yeah.
I was the jazz buyer at Aaron Records
Oh.
for years. Look at the CD. Though I started when it was still albums, record, vinyl,
Yeah.
and then it started moving to CD. And then they moved from Melrose. By the time I left, they moved from Melrose over to uh, whatever it was, Highland.
Highland or something. Yeah, I had a friend who worked for them, Gary Jackson. He was more in the R&B stuff. Um, Craig said the Seattle pianist names Wayne Horowitz and Eric Levy. Have you played with either of them?
I haven't. Although the bass player who I have a duo with, Keith Lowe, and we've played with each other in various ways throughout the time.
Yeah.
Keith is Wayne's bass player in his band Zony Mash, and so I haven't met Wayne. Although I'm scheduled to go to Keith's birthday party at the Royal Room, which is a club that Wayne owns, and I'm sure I'll be able to meet Wayne that night. So I'm looking forward to it. But, we have some cool people up here, that are young folks who are doing interesting things, or cats who have been around for a while and kind of are in semi-retirement, or they getting off the big scene. And Seattle is actually quite a cool place. I'm really looking forward to the post-pandemic renaissance, because everybody's just really, every time I play a gig, it's like lately, people are so happy.
I know. I know, it's so true.
Geez. Well, and then of course now we played Pearl Django played a concert last weekend, and we had a COVID scare. Only one of the guys in the band got it, and the rest of us didn't. But we were playing in a beautiful theater. Nobody's wearing a mask, and then the next day we hear that there was a super spreader event or something. And so it's still not over. I think that we want it to be over more than it is. But anyway, it'll be great when we can get back to,
Yeah. I think we should listen a little to Pearl Django, just a little bit anyway, right?
Okay. That one, that second one down is kind of nice.
Okay.
And no, wait.
By the way, I know.
You know Gail?
Yeah, Gail. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's good. Let's listen to one with Gail.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
How about I'm trying to see. Yeah, Maybe I'm a Fool is good.
Okay.
That's the third one down. Yeah, that's good. We played this.
All right, go ahead. I will stop.
I'll let you we go into the studio at KNKX frequently, and usually before we play at Jazz Alley, a couple of times a year we play there, and then we go on the radio and do a little promo thing. And this was one time we played with Gail.
Oh, cool.
Maybe I'm a fool for loving you so. Maybe I'm a fool, I don't really even know. But I can't stop loving you, darling, though I try. Maybe your goodbye so cruel and unfair. Although you hurt me, my love's still there. And I know that I long for your kisses till I die. All my friends, they all tell me, they say go out and find somebody new. What they don't know, they'll never understand. I'd be wishing that someone new was you. If you should decide to take me back again, all you gotta do is knock on my door and I'll let you in. Taking you back would be foolish. Maybe I'm a
How did he do that?
My friends all told me, yeah, they told me, they said, girl, go out and find somebody new. What they don't know, and they'll never ever understand. I'd be wishing that someone new was you. And if you should decide to take me back again, all you gotta do is knock, and I'll sure enough let you in. Taking you back would be foolish. Maybe I'm a fool. Maybe I'm a fool. If taking you back would be fool, and maybe I'm a fool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Thiele's so great.
Yeah, boy.
We get to
that's-
play with her maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year. Usually when we get a gig and they want a singer, we call Gail. And usually we don't have a drummer. Well, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. But I love her. She's so good.
That is really good. Yeah, she's great. Stan Eyerhoff is here, and he said
Oh, I stand.
KNKX is his favorite internet station. And guess who's here? Taylor.
Oh, Taylor Hatch.
Okay, so you ready for some Taylor questions?
Yeah, but I grabbed this guitar because I think that you might be able to appreciate it and some other folks. This guitar was Ted Green's, one of Ted Green's guitars.
Really?
This was apparently, I received it as a gift from a man named William Perry. I don't know if you've ever run into William Perry,
I don't
but
think so.
he and Ted were buddies. And Barbara
Yeah, Ted's
gave
girlfriend.
this, she gave this because Ted kept this at Barbara's house.
Okay.
And Barbara gave it to William. And then William heard me playing and we chatted and he said, you know, I got something I want to send you. And he sent me this guitar. And
You must have
this-
died when you opened the box.
oh, well, you know, it was pretty incredible. And it's a beautiful guitar.
Oh.
And I have a picture of Ted playing it too. So it brings it all together.
That's so nice. Is that one of his home pictures? Because I kind of remember him in a picture of.
Yeah, there's a picture of him. I think his shirt might be open.
Yeah.
He's kind of just sitting at home and someone took a candid, probably Barbara took a candid shot of him playing it. And he called it Regina,
Regina, yeah.
the name he gave to this guitar. I don't know why. But yeah, it came in the case and the case was stuffed full of kitchen rags from Ted's apartment and other little various and sundry knickknacks that are inside of this little case.
That's funny.
So I couldn't afford. When he after he died, a couple of people approached me about whether or not I wanted to buy one of his guitars,
Yeah.
and of course they were being sold at a premium, and I just couldn't afford
Yeah.
that. And so humbly said no, thank you. I'm sorry, I can't. And but then this guitar came my way, and it's really special, because it's a beautiful guitar, and it isn't one of Ted's Tellies, and so it wasn't spoiled by that kind of race to cash in somehow on there was a kind of thing where people were selling stuff off, and
Yeah. Especially then, Barb didn't die too far beyond Ted. So, and she probably had guitars that she was playing that she liked too, and maybe she had, like you said, he kept
this
that
one was
there.
there at her place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
she was
remember
very
her
kind to me.
playing one like that actually.
Yeah, he liked guilds. Ted liked guilds toward, like in his later years, he really got on a guild thing.
Oh,
And he liked the bigger ones and all different kinds, but this was one of them. And he had said he called it. William told me he called it his warm-up guitar because it had really high action and big thick strings on it when I got it, and because Ted wanted something he had to fight a little bit to warm his fingers up. That's the story I heard
that's
anyway.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and
Here's
Barbara
your
was
first,
very, very kind to me. She
Barbara. Yeah.
yeah, when because she was active on the Ted Green website for quite a few years, or a few years before she passed away, and she was really, really generous and kind to me as well.
She was a lovely person. It didn't surprise me too much when she passed away, because she was sick, but it also just broke her heart that Ted wasn't around.
Right,
And yeah,
could tell.
they were a very beautiful couple. Taylor's first question.
Okay.
In your recent practice, what is one thing you're working on that you're still having trouble trying to master? Just one thing.
One thing, improvising counterpoint.
There you go. When it comes to working a chord melody, how do you balance the melody and harmony? Who was one guitarist that drilled that on you in a lesson?
The melody is supreme. If the melody is sound and beautifully played, anything else that you play above it or below it or in relationship to it is kind of like icing on the cake. But on the other hand, if you have all kinds of fancy changes and substitutions and incredible everythings and the melody isn't singing, then in my opinion, it's not succeeding. So the success of a solo guitar arrangement, by the way, Taylor, I don't like the word chord melody because there are connotations about the word chord melody, and certainly people use it all the time, and that's not a problem. It's not going to make the world worse, but it suggests that there's chords and then there's melodies, and I think it's the chords aren't really the thing. The melody is the thing. And if you can play a melody beautifully and then you put other voices together with it, it will naturally be beautiful. But if you have all kinds of fancy harmonies, substitutions and stuff, and then you try and stick a melody on top of it, it won't necessarily be beautiful. And so that's my priority is I learn the song. Right there, I'm playing it in a different key. Let me play it in the regular key. So if that melody's beautiful, all the little other things I put down, behind it are nice, but it's the melody that's singing there. So I have had, Joe Diorio was very strong about melody. I mean, oddly, people think he's this wild guy, but he was really saying, melody, melody, melody. Ted also. was a melody man, not by so much what he said, but how he played. He always featured the melody beautifully. And then Nelson Riddle's orchestrations always set the melody of the singer up so that the orchestration never overwhelmed the melody. And I just take that, all of those things have come to form my sort of morality about this business, you know, and my technique reflects that. I play in a certain way to get that melody to be really heard. You know, I want the person in the back of the room to hear that melody, you know.
Yeah.
Everything else, including how you set the amplifier and how loud or soft you play. You know, I sometimes play notes that are so soft that most people aren't hearing them. But if you take them away, it doesn't sound right. That would be in the accompaniment, you know. I've had people transcribe my solo guitar performances, and they're continuously leaving a note out of the voicing because I'm playing it quite softly. You know, so I just have to go back through and kind of add them in. But anyway, that's my idea. The melody is really what it's about. You know, I always say, you know, if my mom shows up to the gig, I want her to be happy. You know, and she doesn't care about reharmonization and stuff.
Yeah.
She wants to hear a song. So.
Yeah. This is kind of an interesting question. Knowing that you have a peacefulness to your teaching, how do you remain patient in your practice, and how do you apply that to teaching? Is it easy for you to get impatient?
Is this also Taylor still?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What I remind myself of, and it's become such a constant reminder that it has gone sort of below the level of, you know, talking to myself about it, is that when I'm teaching, it's not about me. And to be able to connect to the joyful feeling that I get when someone gets it puts me in a position of service. So I can experience the big payoff is the joy I get when someone gets something, or when they understand it, or when they reflect it. And so, you know, I suppose there are times when someone, you know, sees me becoming impatient, but I don't really think it's common. The one thing though that makes me impatient, and this is interesting, is that when someone can do something but they believe to themselves that they can't, then I'll say, "Come on, man, you can do this," and I use my energy to kind of push them a little bit, because it's like, wait, you know this, you can do this, please do it. Come on, I know you can.
Yeah.
That may seem like impatience, but really it's just a strong kind of encouragement that sometimes certain individuals will benefit from.
Yeah. That's
But the time it takes for somebody to get something rarely makes me impatient, because I'm involved in the challenge is to try and find a way to either remain silent long enough, or to say one or two things that point to it clearly. You know, impatience in the past, it would always happen when I was on my own timeline. And I realized that when I'm teaching, it's not my timeline. It just isn't.
I have a good story for you.
Okay.
Mick Goodrick, when I went to Berkeley, you know, there was mostly guitar players back then. It was like 72 to 75. And in fact, they didn't have a vocal department. I was there for flute. And my friend was a guitarist, and for about 6 months, he would go to Mick's apartment and never take the guitar out of the box. And then finally one day, Mick said, "Why don't you take the guitar out?" You know, and my friend was, you know, all nervous, right? And then Mick said, "Why don't you play me something?" You know, so he did, you know, he's just playing whatever. And then Mick said, "Why don't you play me what you're afraid to play?" And so my friend is, you know, you can imagine, he was playing whatever he thought was challenging, you know. And he noticed that Mick was just like staring out the window, like he was just staring out the window. And so finally, my friend stopped, and Mick turned to him and said, "What was I doing?" And my friend said, "Nothing." And Mick said, "Right." My friend, he said, his life changed at that moment. He never, ever forgot that. But I love that story.
Yeah, Mick is a real unique and wonderful teacher. So many people have similar
Yeah.
types of stories. He had an intuitive way of being with people, that's for sure. Cathy, it's getting to a point where I have to say goodbye because I have a student in a few minutes.
That's all right because it's been just about 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to thank you for being on. It's been a really enjoyable conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel like we ought to know each other better. We ought to get together and play sometime. I think that would be really good.
Absolutely. I would love that. It'd be great.
Good. Well, thanks so much for asking me. And if anybody, I don't know if anybody showed up or who showed up or everybody is still there, but thank you for coming and watching. I hope it was helpful and maybe a little inspiring.
I'm sure it was more than a little inspiring. So thanks. And you know what? You could actually leave and I'll talk a little bit more to my audience.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. We got to try and figure out how to do something, even if it's remote. Maybe I can pretend to accompany you in my mind and send you something, and you can sing over it.
Let's do it. Let's try. I think it would be fun.
All right. Very good. Okay. Take care, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thanks,
Bye,
Cathy.
Tim. So, wow, that was cool, right? Even for people who weren't guitarists, but especially for guitarists. Wow. Tomorrow, and also to hear Pearl Django. I haven't really listened a lot to Pearl Django, so that was really nice too. Tomorrow is Gene Perla. Gene is a really interesting, longtime musician, bassist on the East Coast, and he has a really interesting history. He's an educator, and he also is kind of an entrepreneur. He likes business stuff. That's going to be really fun. And then Wednesday, a friend of mine who is a singer, and she likes to create events. She's an extremely personable person and has traveled a bit and runs a Sunday venue here in LA. And her name is Linda A. Her real name is Linda Smith, but she's dropping the Smith. She's calling herself Linda A. Ta-da. So anyway, that's Wednesday. And then Thursday through Sunday, we're going to have the archives. Thursday is Terrence Love, who created and owned Steamers, which was Orange County's premier jazz club for many years. And Friday, H.B. Barnum, who's he's a very famous person in many ways. He was a singer, composer, producer in the days of Aretha Franklin, that kind of stuff. He's really a cool guy, really interesting to talk to. Saturday, Sally Stevens, who was mostly known for her contracting of vocalists in Los Angeles for studio sessions, but she also ran choirs and really an interesting person. Like, I'm not sure if she was head of certain entertainment organizations, but she was in there, on the board or as a job vice president. I can't remember. It's been a while. And then Sunday, the artist who's kind of a little bit spread out in his style, Greg Karukas, pianist who played smooth jazz and Brazilian. He has a big Brazilian love affair. Next week, just quickly, the live people, Ernie Watts, quite a famous jazz sax player, Ernie Watts, been around for a long time. Tuesday, another great guitar player, Reiner Sivily, who's from LA, and he's a beautiful player as well. And then Wednesday, another kind of famous guy, Billy Vera. And he's been a singer and producer and recording artist, traveling artist. So that's going to be Wednesday. It's really fun. If you're in Los Angeles, I have several gigs this week. One is Thursday in the middle of the San Fernando Valley in Canoga Park. It's a really interesting kind of throwback bar that's still owned by the original owners. Well, I don't know about original, but for many, many years. It's called Casey's Tavern. And friends of mine who are kind of on the straight ahead side, Henry Newmark and Dan Sawyer and Dave Moscow and Jack Darrow play there. They're really great. I had a ball the last time. Drinks are cheap. The gig is really fun. We had a great time. So that's Thursday, May 5th. And then Saturday, May 7th, we are, I have my monthly jam session. So I do a set up front, and then we get in on doing a jam. Boy, the last time, it was a fantastic jam. A lot of singers, every now and then instrumentalists come, which we're totally open to. I used to have a jam session for about 15, 16 years it was really an open jam session, especially the first 7 years. Lots of musicians came through. So anyway, that's Saturday. We're also celebrating our friend Dan DeVilla's birthday. And especially when you see me out listening to jazz, good chance my friend Dan DeVilla is with me. So that's this week. So anything else? I have my little book, The Act of Becoming, that just came out. You can get this on Book Locker or Amazon. And this is a philosophy book about how similar lessons travel into different areas of your life. For me, it's singing jazz, voice technique, and life. The exact same lesson will apply in all of those things. So that's what this little book is about. I also have some little, you can find these on my website, just in case you're interested. I have a few of these. They're different. These are stickers. This is the Noontime logo. And like, for instance, this one says, art is the tie that unites the planet. This one says, all it takes is one human. I have a few of these. So come and join us again. Glad you were here. And thanks again to Tim Lerch. I'm looking forward to sometime making something happen. And I'm just getting more drilled in on my logic and how that can actually be something I use more often. How about that? Okay, everybody, have a great day. Love you all. Bye.